Hey everybody, it's time to talk about cheap records once again. And well, what can I say? It's like I've made a zillion of these videos and no sign of running out of cheap records to talk about. Most of the stuff I talk about in the past has been kind of oddball music, strange music maybe you'd have to wear headphones to play. Maybe not. Depends on what your family situation is. Mine is such that a lot of times I have to wear headphones. But yours might be a little bit more liberal, as they say. Anyway, I decided to do a quick video this time on focusing on records that are maybe a little bit more accessible taste-wise to the masses. Normal people music, kind of. But yet, I think after going through these records, I think my whole concept of what normal people listen to is probably seriously warped. And by my age, and also just by my lack of perspective, because I've been interested in unusual music my entire life. Anyway, what we're listening to now is something I consider normal. Enjoyable by everybody, but it's one of those records that just made zero impact. And it's funny, when I was a kid growing up in South Florida, there was the cool radio station WSHE in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and they played this album quite a bit, and I've never heard it anywhere else. And I chased it down electronically via eBay or Discogs, one of those, and it cost like $2, brand new. Anyway, it's a great record though. If you like sort of jazzy, bluesy rock a la Van Morrison, albeit with less great vocals, this will really do the trick for you. This guy's Irish too. His name's Mick Cox, and he used to be in a band called Heir Apparent. They did one psychedelic record produced by Jimi Hendrix, actually. And I had that, I didn't like it, but this record's great. He went on and recorded this after Heir Apparent broke up, and he's the lead guitarist on this. Great personnel on this too. Mick Weaver on keyboards. The horn section's got Alan Skidmore in it. It's a Shel Talmy production, so I don't know if you know about Shel Talmy, but Shel Talmy, almost everything he ever produced is at least interesting. So this fits right in with the whole Shel Talmy thing. Anyway, the Mick Cox Band, and it's just called that, Mick Cox Band. It can be had for pennies, and that's what's playing right now. And I'm still digging this. So it's kind of a blues rock with jazz around the edges, all original. A lot of these records I've realized have sort of a blues component to them, if they're not out and out blues. And that's sort of the theme here, I guess. So another artist who's been associated with the blues, and actually is kind of a blues rock man, and started out playing the blues, but also has some serious jazz chops, is Robben Ford. And I'm still a fan of Robben Ford's music. His first couple of solo albums, though, are closer to jazz rock fusion than anything else. They're pretty mellow, though. This is, if it not his very first, one of his first solo records. It's called Schizophonic. It's got no personnel listed on the back, but there are no vocals. It's all instrumental. It's LA studio guys having a good time once again. Kind of like that Howard Roberts that I talked about in a previous video, but not as weird. But definitely gets out there, and you'll see he's got the Les Paul and the alto sax. I think he dropped the saxophone, but he plays a lot of sax on this record. And he's pretty good. Actually, some of it sounds kind of like a John Clemmer track, you know, kind of just wailing away on the alto while there's Fender Rhodes percolating in the background. It's kind of a pleasant record, and can be had very cheaply. All instrumental, Robben Ford Schizophonic on LA International Records. It's a good one. He followed that up with The Inside Story, which is backed by a band that later became the Yellow Jackets, that Robben Ford was actually in initially, the Yellow Jackets, and they hung around for a while. They're a great band, really like the Yellow Jackets, except for some of their stuff gets a little too smooth. This has vocals on it, but lots of chops and sort of bridges the gap between fusion and blues, and totally suitable for mass consumption. And Robben Ford's a great singer, can't go wrong there. But anyway, highly recommend these two early Robben Ford records. An artist that my brother introduced me to very early on was John Mayall. I always dug his stuff. I felt that his masterwork, however, was neglected. Like, a lot of people don't know that this record exists for some reason. And he did go through a jazzy blues phase. And I think one of his records is even called Jazz Blues Fusion. Good stuff, actually. I used to have it. But this thing is a monster. It's called Bare Wires. And if you can read the cover, it's basically John Mayall backed by Coliseum. John Heisman, Dick Hextall Smith, Mick Tailor, Henry Lowther, Chris Mercer. What an amazing band this is. And this is a killer record. This is actually wanders into sort of the progressive environs that Coliseum existed in. Makes sense, because Coliseum's the backing band here. But it's Mayall's show, and it's definitely a blues rock record. But it's definitely got some jazzy, proggy spice going on. And it's almost has an elegiac, sort of downer feel to it overall. Nothing else before or since has sounded like this. And Mayall is, I think he's still around, unquestionably a master of the genre. But this record is just, to me anyway, rises above the rest. Anyway, Bare Wires it's called. Can be had for a few bucks. Another artist that drew heavily upon the blues, that was in a big band. It's not Jeff Beck. I could talk for hours about Jeff Beck. I am a serious Jeff Beck fan. I have all of his records. If you don't have them and you've been listening to this rambling about music, you really need to get into Jeff Beck if you haven't already. Another guy, though, and I could talk about Cream for days too, is Jack Bruce. And what a great voice and musician he is. These records, Harmony Row, Songs for a Tailor, have amazing personnel. Guys like Chris Spedding, John Marshall, the great drummer from Soft Machine, Harry Beckett is in the horn section on these. Just both of these records are amazing. They're kind of song-based, though. They're definitely blues-influenced, but if you know anything about Jack Bruce, they're more than just the blues, more than just rock, real serious, sort of almost art rock, but also highly enjoyable, I think. And the compositions are just go places, kind of like some of David Bowie's stuff. He sounds nothing like David Bowie, but they talk about David Bowie using unusual chord progressions, and his songs taking strange turns and hard to cover because they're harmonically so advanced. Jack Bruce invented that stuff, my friends, and this guy was a genius. And these records, it just stuns me how cheap they are. A couple of bucks, and you can find them everywhere. Dollar bins. Songs for Tailor, Harmony Row, unimpeachably great records. Another band that people have forgotten about is Stray Dog. And they're more of a hard rock band, but definitely heavy blues influenced. It's a guitar-based drums trio. The guitarist is a guy named Snuffy Walden, who went on to become a major soundtrack composer. If you've ever watched the TV show 30-something, me and my first wife were totally addicted to that TV show back in the 80s. He wrote the theme song for that. And he's gone on to write tons of TV themes and movie soundtracks. The guy's huge in that business. And I think he's used the proceeds from that to fund some later solo projects, which sort of veer towards the new age solo acoustic guitars end of things. This is the first Stray Dog record, and this is a super, super heavy blues rock thing. Kind of like the Groundhogs, maybe a little bit less bluesy and more hard rocky. But if you're into Budgie and let me think, Deep Purple, there's not a lot of keyboards on this. But if you're into bands like that, Early Judas Priest, getting really heavy. This album will fulfill a lot of those needs, a lot of those musical needs. Really a fantastic record that's just stayed in the collection forever. I've had this for years. They did record a follow-up, not nearly as good. They hired a singer, and he wrote most of the music on the subsequent albums, and not as adventurous as this. This has got nice long tracks, long guitar solos, maximum craziness. Can't say enough good things about this. See it all the time. It's a cheapie. Another record that has actually been sampled by DJs repeatedly, Beastie Boys most famously, but remains cheap. And I actually picked this up literally for $1. Looks like it's been unplayed. And I was talking about blues rock earlier. Blues Project. Can't go wrong with this. All their records are pretty much cheap. Al Cooper went on to become a hugely famous producer and solo artist in his own right. Recorded some really interesting stuff, but these Blues Project records, especially this one, have really stuck with me over the years. My brother played this nonstop when I was less than 10 years old, 7 or 8 years old, so it's been kind of, it's probably like a Blues Project area of my brain, and it's unavoidable. Still appeals to me. The music on here is really good. The drumming is great. Yeah. Can't go wrong with this. This is the record with flute thing on it. Wonderful instrumental. You could play this at a cocktail party with your adult friends, and they would dig it. This is what I'm talking about. $1 record that will give you hours of enjoyment that people have forgotten about. Go get it. That's what these videos are all about. Never been big into folk, but here's another record that the masses are gonna love. That's subtly weird and subtly jazzy and stands on its own as a listening experience, but is a folk, mellow folk record. Pentangle. Pretty much everything they did was great. This record though, Reflection, killer all the way through. It's got a sidelong track. I can't even remember what it was called. I think it might be the title track. It's got like a 12 or 13 minute long jam on it. It's really, really good. It's seriously good. I've had several copies of this. I'm not sure how cheap these are anymore. The millennials might have picked up on this. That's okay. I love millennials. But they do pick up on things, and that's when the price point begins to rise somewhat. But if you're in the mood for any kind of folky, jazzy, folky, mellow, mysterious music, Pentangle Reflection, get it. It's really good. And the musicianship, top notch. I think that Bert Jansch was still involved in the band at this point. And highly, highly, highly recommended. So I always talk about prog a little bit, always talk about jazz a little bit. I'm going to follow up with a few prog and jazz records that sort of get into the mellow realm of mass appreciation. This is an album that I've had multiple copies of. Jury's still out on it with me. You might really dig it though. I'm doing you a favor. Automatic Man, all-star band. Michael Shreve from Santana, Baete, Todd Cochran on keyboards, who did some really cool jazz rock fusion records that sell for like $1 zillion now. Donny Harvey on bass, really famous British session man. And the guitarist is Pat Thrall, who's a great, great guitar player. Really like Pat Thrall a lot. Anyway, these records are pretty cool. Spacey, prog rock with the emphasis on the rock. Really good records. They did a couple of them. Shreve was only on this one. I think they replaced him with Glenn Simmons after this. Kind of a spacey, fusion-y prog rock sound. I like it. It's a friendly, fun record. It gets out there a little bit. Not quite as much as it could though. Another record that, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I was looking in the list. You know, I do a list on Discogs of all these records. I'll get around to listing all these in Discogs, but there's a list on Discogs.com called Cheap Heat. That's me, and I've talked about all these records, and I list them all on Discogs, and I check it. And if the price goes up, they're gone. Okay, if it goes above like $20, forget about it. I don't count postage though. Otherwise, I'd have to rule out pretty much all the European stuff. 801. Anyway, all-star band started by Phil Manzanera, a guitarist of Roxy Music fame. This has Eno on it. Bill McCormick from Quiet Sun and Matching Mole. Francis Monkman from Curved Air. Not Daryl Weighs Wolf. Simon Phillips, super uber drummer. And Lloyd Watson, the sole sort of obscure member of the band, a blues slide guitarist, actually. And he actually plays really cool stuff on this. Anyway, it's got Bill McCormick's headstock on the cover, so maybe it's really a Bill McCormick thing. I've always chalked it up to Phil Manzanera. Anyway, great album. I was in the gym the other day, and it just came on the Spotify in the gym. I'm like, this is great. Tomorrow Never Knows they cover. Eno is all over it, sings, plays synthesizers. Simon Phillips is unbelievable on it. You've really got to get this. Really got to get this record if you like music. 801 Live. The follow-ups, there was a follow-up, Listen Now, and then they sort of morphed into Phil Manzanera's solo project. Also very worthy. A couple of jazz records that are highly accessible. If you're having a cocktail party, you can absolutely put them on. Shelly Man and His Men, The Gambit. I've found multiple copies of this for like a couple of bucks. I'm not quite sure why. On Contemporary Records, this is actually a mono version, I believe. And it's got a great lineup, but it's not a easy listening cocktail jazz record at all. Charlie Mariano is all over this. He wrote a sidelong composition on this, and also one song on the second side. So it's almost a Charlie Mariano record. Highly recommended. A lot of Shelly Mann stuff is really solid and has stayed in my collection over the years. Of course, the fusion stuff he did is great, but some of his earlier stuff, it gets pretty weird actually. But this is not so weird. It's just straight up good. But it's jazz. Another jazz guy, big name, whose albums seem to get passed over for I don't know why, is Stan Getz. And here's two records by Stan Getz that I've adored over the years. This one has, get this, Chick Corea, Tony Williams, Stanley Clarke, and Airto on it. So you can't miss. You got to run out and get this one. This is killing all the way through. Tony lights it up, baby. This is so good. Tony is so awesome on this. And it's got a good mix of like standards, Lush Life, La Fiesta, which turned into a kind of a standard. It wasn't a standard when this was made, but it's become one. So 500 Miles High is on this. It's just great. Stan Getz was an amazing tenor sax player. Had a beautiful tone. That was what he was known for. And this album sort of bridges the gap between standard jazz and fusion or jazz rock. Very exciting record. I really like it a lot. He did this on Verve a couple years prior, Sweet Rain. It's more of an orchestral jazz approach. This has got Grady Tate on drums. Talk about an underappreciated musician. Grady Tate, man, what a feel. Anyway, this has also got Chick Corea on it and Ron Carter. And yeah, it's a quartet record, but I think there's some orchestral backing. Anyway, Sweet Rain is the name of the record. It's a beautiful record, and you can put this on anytime for any bunch of people, and it will be appreciated. I literally got this for $1. I'm hoping you can find it for $1 as well. In good shape. It's on Verve. Came out in the late 60s. Speaking of the late Chick Corea, what a wonderful musician he is. He's done so much, and so much I could do a whole thing on him. Anyway, I picked this up back in the day for like 50 cents. It's on Groove Merchant. It's called Sundance. It came out in Japan first under a different title. And check out the personnel. Dave Holland, Jack DeJohnette, Horace E. Arnold is on a couple of tracks on drums, and Woody Shaw. Fantastic record. This is one of Chick's more out records, though. So I had to put in one weird record, right? Got to keep it honest, right? This is one of Chick's almost free jazz records. This was done in the wake of Circle and all that. It's not quite as out as Circle, but it's certainly getting into that zone in places. Not quite as abstract, but definitely a free jazz record. Anyway, you owe it to yourself to check this out. It's really fantastic. And it's a little strange. This is definitely late night headphones listening, but I thought I'd just leave you with this one. Anyway, I hope this has been a useful video. Normal people music. You know, you gotta please the masses every once in a while. These are all records that I think could be enjoyed by the whole family, and I hope you enjoy them too if you find them. And if you don't, you can always pass them on to a friend. Ah! Almost knocked over the camera.